The day is January 15th, 1973. The United States has been at war, fighting against the Viet Cong deep in the jungles of Vietnam for over a decade now. Suddenly, Richard Nixon announces all offensive action is to be suspended, pending an end to the war. That end came shortly after, when the Paris Peace Accords were signed on the 27th, and the United States officially ended the war in Vietnam. But how did it come to be that one of the largest militaries in the world would withdraw from action in combat? Well, to understand just what happened over in Nam, we need to jump back to the start of the conflict. Unknown to most, the United States actually became involved with Vietnam during the 1950s. However, there were no boots on the ground until the early 1960s. The war itself was one of red versus blue. Just like the Korean War, the goal was to gain a US-friendly foothold within Asia by supporting the pro-Western governments of South Vietnam in their attempt to unify the country. To the north, the Viet Cong were supported largely by the Soviet Union and China. And just like with the Korean War, it was technically a local war in which both sides received support from foreign nations. So, now that we know why the war was fought, how did it turn out to be such a disaster for the US military? The issue wasn't in the ability of the US Army to kill its opponents. As the numbers show, the firepower of the US was unmatched, with napalm raining from the skies on the daily and the body count for the Viet Cong racking up. It seemed a surefire victory for the US, no matter how long it would take. Their mission wasn't one of liberation, as search and destroy was the general's doctrine of choice. Soldiers were sent out like bait in an attempt to lure the Viet Cong out of hiding, only to be obliterated. The real problems came when the folks back at home began to hear just what was going on in the jungle. Thousands of young GIs were crossing the ocean and coming home with body bags. As the anti-war movement picked up, even celebrities were refusing to support the war, with big names like Muhammad Ali even being arrested for draft evasion. There were protests everywhere across the country, and soldiers coming home were not decorated and respected, but hated and vilified by the public. Eventually, as support for the war continued to dwindle, it became clear it was time to put an end to things. The Paris Peace Accord was signed, and the troops began to ship home, putting an end to the decade-long conflict in Vietnam, once and for all.